If you're a student of self-defense, the question I'm going to ask you should be easy to answer. The question is simple. What would you do if someone wanted to harm you and you couldn't fight them, and you can't run away? Lots of people say they study martial arts for self-defense, and they choose their system based on how much it would help them in a real situation. If your system is about self-defense, it should be helping you to answer this question. But does it? This video will help you wrap your head around how and why this question is so difficult for martial arts systems to answer. And, more so, it will start to give you answers to this question. So if you'd like answers to this question, keep listening. Many martial arts systems claim to be good for self-defense, but very few of the popular systems today offer anything outside of fighting or hope. The problem is that none of the most popular systems can see beyond fighting or fantasy, and the truth is, neither of these areas is really good for self-defense. On one side, we have what is now known as combat sports. These are systems designed to help teach you how to fight, and for the most part, they do a very good job of doing that within their limited scope. Because of the sporting aspect of these systems, they will constantly pressure test you and train you to effectively use the techniques prescribed by the system inside a physical confrontation. For example, if you study kickboxing, you will learn how to hit hard and how to take hard shots yourself. You will condition your body to take and deal abuse for long periods of time. This is great if you're in a one-on-one striking match. But what if someone takes you to the ground? The obvious answer to this question is to study a grappling system. Grappling sports like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can give you a great amount of skill in the area of ground grappling. And in today's world, you could also study and compete in mixed martial arts, which will give you a well-rounded approach to stand-up striking and grappling, seamlessly merging the two into one system. But what if they have a weapon? There's multiple attackers. They outweigh you by a few hundred pounds. Or perhaps they're just better at MMA than you. It's tempting to say, well, then you just run away. But running away might not be that easy. They could be faster than you. They could corner you. Or they could take you by surprise. Then what? These kinds of situations are exactly what self-defense should be preparing you for. However, most popular systems today only talk about situations where it's possible or ideal to fight the other person. What if you can't fight them? On the other side of popular martial arts today, we have martial arts that deal mostly in fantasy. The objective of these martial arts is to create an aesthetic. Because people conflate the idea of martial arts and self-defense, they automatically think that this aesthetic is something they can achieve in real conflict. When their life is on the line, they expect to do all kinds of spinning moves and fancy things to save themselves. And if you've never been in genuine physical conflict, maybe you think these kinds of things will happen. And it doesn't matter if you're small, because these fancy moves will help you overcome people much bigger and more powerful than you. In truth, in real physical conflict, size, speed, violence, and aggression absolutely matter, and can never be taken away even by the fanciest of spinning kicks. As a person who studied martial arts to achieve an aesthetic, and martial arts based on sport, the sport martial arts tend to be much more practical, meaning that what you do in sport will often closely resemble what happens in an actual fight. The problem with sport martial arts is that they always confine us to people that we actually can fight. This is why sport martial arts have weight classes and skill divisions. This ensures that you'll be dealing with someone that you actually have the ability to fight. If sport martial arts didn't have these divisions, all sport training would be limited to supremely physical people who were very skilled. This would quickly make it impossible for most of us to learn sport martial arts. The divisions found in sport martial arts are all well and good as long as we're talking about sport. But once we expect sport martial arts to teach us about self-defense, we'll realize that unless we are one of the gifted few, we may be facing someone who is much bigger and more skilled than we are. How do we deal with these people? Of course, the answer is not to fight them. If you get into a fight with an MMA champ, you're likely going to lose. So what can you do? When I began teaching, I had studied martial arts for a long time. I was right around 200 pounds, in great physical shape, and in my 30s. The problem was I was often being asked to teach people who were much smaller than me and less skilled than me how to defend themselves. So as a teacher, how was I going to teach these people to deal with people who were physically much greater than them? At first, the answer may seem simple. Well, train them to be as capable and skilled as you are, and they'll be fine. But many of my students were already past the prime of their life, and many of them would never be the same size I was no matter how hard they trained. And a great number of them didn't have the time to become as skilled as I had. So how could I help these students? I guess I could have shrugged my shoulders and said, sorry, you're not cut out to be able to defend yourself. But that didn't sit right with me. I wanted to know if I could actually train these people to deal with someone much larger than them. So I began looking at other places for these answers. Then I realized something very important. Fighting is always difficult and risky, and ideal self-defense wouldn't involve fighting at all. In fact, the word fight was the wrong word for what I was now interested in. But as a martial artist, fight was the only word I could conceive of to get at what I was looking for. The word fight defines so much of what we do as martial artists that we really can't see beyond it, and that's very dangerous for someone who's truly interested in self-defense. I needed a new way to think about the kinds of skills I wanted outside of fighting. Eventually, I realized that everything I wanted to know was included in the word conflict. While conflict includes fighting, it also allowed for skills outside of fighting. I eventually came to understand that there were many more skills to conflict other than fighting skills, and that this new way of thinking allowed many new skills that were equal to or even greater than the skills I had found in fighting systems. In order to wrap my head around everything outside of fighting that I needed to understand, I began learning about what are called conflict resolution systems. And I also created a chart to help me understand what kinds of skills were needed. I call this chart the spectrum of conflict. The spectrum of conflict is a simple chart that is broken into 6 stages. These 6 stages are the ones that I believe to be most important in conflict. The chart is read from left to right. It shows how conflict begins and ends. Each stage of the spectrum offers skill sets that can be used to resolve conflict. However, if you fail to resolve conflict at any particular stage, you will be forced to move to the right and attempt to solve the conflict with those skill sets. As you go further to the right, the chart and stages require more physicality, more skill, more effort, and are much more risky. If you look at this chart, you can see that fighting skills are actually the ones that require the most physicality and are the most risky and demanding. This is not ideal for self-defense. Another interesting thing you can learn from this chart is how many skills are not fighting skills. In fact, only 1/3 of this chart is devoted to fighting skills. A full 2/3 of this chart are skills that are non-fighting skills and can be developed by anyone regardless of physicality or age. This chart represents what I needed to answer my students' questions about self-defense, and in the end was what I wanted to know in order to protect myself. In the next video, I will go into more detail about the spectrum and explain exactly how it works and what it offers. There are many important skills outside of fighting, and as a student of self-defense, you must be able to understand these skills and how to apply them. While it's undeniable that fighting skills are important for self-defense, if you master the skills before fighting, you may never have to fight in your entire lifetime. And that's truly a wonderful thing, because while it's fun to fight in sport, fighting for your life is something you'll probably never want to do. If you're interested in the other parts of this video series, you'll have to join my Patreon. These videos and other videos dealing with conflict outside of fighting will be available on my Patreon, Christopher Hine at patreon.com. Thanks for watching. See you in another video soon.